You ever wake up one day and realize time has passed you by like a stranger on the street? You spent years trying to be good, good enough for them, good enough for society, good enough for your past to forgive you. And somewhere in that chaos of people pleasing and perfection chasing, you forgot you. But hear me now. Life doesn't begin when you're born. It doesn't begin when you graduate or when you get married or land that job. Real life begins at 40. When your patience wears thin for nonsense. When your soul grows tired of small talk and fake friends. When the masks fall off and you stop apologizing for your strength. That's when the fire in you becomes dangerous. Not violent, not reckless, but so focused, so disciplined, so purposeful that no one can touch you without feeling your power. Because now you've been through storms. You've lost sleep over people who wouldn't even flinch if you fell. You've learned to stand, not because the world clapped for you, but because you finally clapped for yourself. And that's when life truly begins. When you stop existing for approval and start living in purpose. You become dangerous the moment you stop pretending. When you stop acting like the version of yourself they created and finally start standing in who you really are, unshaken, unbothered, and unapologetically raw. That's when the world feels the shift. See, most people walk around wearing masks that were handed to them by their parents, their teachers, or society. They forget what their real face even looks like. But when you hit that turning point in life, when you've been broken enough times and survived it, when you've been counted out and still got back up, something changes. You stop shrinking to fit into rooms that can't contain your light. You stop dimming your spirit so others don't feel insecure. You begin to realize that your uniqueness is your weapon. You don't have to be louder, richer, or more connected to be powerful. You just have to be real, because truth is magnetic. And when you know who you are fully, deeply, and without shame, people either stand in awe or walk away. And either way, you're okay. Because your value is no longer up for negotiation. You've set your price. And peace is the non-refundable deposit. When you finally know who you are, you stop chasing temporary things. You stop mistaking attention for love and chaos for passion. You've learned through experience that the noise around you often comes from people who haven't even found themselves yet. You used to be one of them. Seeking validation in the wrong places, staying silent just to keep the peace, wearing the smile even when your soul was screaming, but not anymore. Now you know your worth because life taught it to you the hard way. You sat alone in dark seasons, wondering if you mattered, and out of that silence, your identity was born. You realize that what you survived gave you authority, that your scars are not shame, they're proof of victory. So you speak differently. You walk into rooms like you belong, not because of arrogance, but because you finally believe it. There's a calm that settles in your spirit when you're no longer performing, when you don't need to impress, only to express. That's the real power of knowing who you are. It makes your presence a mirror, reflecting truth, demanding honesty, and exposing everything fake. You used to crave belonging, now you crave alignment. The older you get, the more peace becomes the new success. You realize that being liked is not the same as being respected, and approval is no longer the fuel you need to function. You've shed old layers like worn-out clothes, titles, roles, expectations that never truly fit. And now what remains is your essence, pure, unfiltered, and real. You don't enter conversations to be heard, you speak to be understood. You don't react out of insecurity, you respond from a place of knowing. And that's a dangerous thing. Because most people are still out here trying to find themselves in other people, but not you. You don't need the world to tell you who you are. You tell the world who you are by how you live, by how you love, and by how you walk away when something doesn't serve you. You've tasted freedom, not the kind that comes from rebellion, but the kind that comes from truth. And that truth has made you powerful in ways no amount of money or applause ever could. Knowing who you are means you're no longer at war with yourself. You stop second-guessing your instincts. You stop battling that inner critic, that voice that once told you you're not enough. You face that voice head on. You've cried through it, fought through it, bled through it. And now you've silenced it, not with anger, but with clarity. You know what matters to you, you know what makes your heart beat faster, what makes your soul feel alive. And you don't waste time anymore chasing empty things. You understand now that being dangerous doesn't mean being cruel. It means being clear. Clear about your mission, your boundaries, your values. It means you walk into a space and don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Your life speaks. Your energy speaks. And if people don't recognize it, that's okay. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to be true to you. Because the most dangerous person in the room is the one who knows themselves so well they can't be manipulated, broken, or bought. See, they don't tell you that peace is what real power looks like. They show you noise, fame, drama. But real power is stillness. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need an audience to feel alive. It's walking away from what you've outgrown without feeling the need to explain yourself. When you know who you are, you don't seek closure. You create it. You don't beg for apologies. You forgive, not for them, but to free yourself. And that makes you unstoppable. You've stopped living for the next big moment and started living in the moment. You've stopped asking, who do they want me to be, and started asking, who did I come here to become? There's nothing more magnetic than a person who has come home to themselves, who doesn't flinch when rejected, doesn't shrink when doubted, and doesn't chase when left behind. Because your worth was never attached to their recognition. It was always yours to claim. You've claimed it now. And that claim makes you dangerous. When you know who you are, your circle gets smaller, but your soul gets lighter. You no longer fear losing people who were only there for the version of you that tolerated disrespect. You don't mourn over doors that close. You bless them. You've learned to release with love and grow without guilt. That makes you rare, because so many people stay in places they've outgrown just to feel safe. But you've tasted the discomfort of growth, and you'd rather face that pain than remain trapped in something comfortable but soul suffocating. That's a bold kind of freedom. You choose alignment over attachment. You choose growth over familiarity. You don't confuse loyalty with self-abandonment anymore. That used to be your weakness, staying too long, giving too much, saying yes when your spirit screamed no, but those days are over. You've learned to hear yourself again. And more importantly, you trust what you hear. That trust is your power. That power is your compass. And that compass will never steer you wrong again. You move differently now. You don't hustle for your value, you honor it. You don't seek permission to take up space, you claim it. Because you understand now, the world doesn't define you, you define your world. Knowing who you are means you can walk into any situation and be solid no matter the weather. You can be praised or criticized, loved or rejected, but your foundation doesn't shake. Because it's rooted in something deeper than opinion. You've built your identity not on fleeting moments, but on fire-forged truths. And every trial, every heartbreak, every lonely night, it didn't break you. It built you. Now your presence carries weight, not because you demand it, but because you've earned it. Quietly, privately, consistently. You've walked through seasons that would have broken a weaker version of you and came out stronger, wiser, more whole. That's what makes you dangerous. The kind of dangerous that changes rooms, that heals people, that challenges lies, that awakens others to their own power just by standing in yours. And now you don't just exist. You live. You live with purpose. You wake up with intention. You walk with integrity. You lead with love, but you're not afraid to let go when something disrupts your peace. You've learned that not everyone deserves access, that not everything deserves a reaction. You know who you are now. That means you're grounded. That means your yes means yes and your no means no. That means you don't break your back for people who wouldn't bend for you. It's not bitterness, it's balance. It's wisdom. Because when you truly know yourself, you protect your spirit like treasure. You don't waste it. You don't give it away to those who haven't earned it. And that makes you a different kind of powerful. A quiet kind. A stable kind. A dangerous kind. Not because you seek to control anyone, but because no one can control you. And that right there, that is when life truly begins. When you are finally, dangerously, fully, completely you. There comes a moment in your life when your words stop working, not because you don't have something to say, but because silence becomes stronger than speech. There was a time you tried to explain yourself, tried to justify your decisions, tried to plead with people to see your worth. But the more you talked, the more they ignored you. The more you tried to fix things, the more they broke you. So you went quiet, not out of defeat, but out of awakening. You realized your voice wasn't meant to beg, it was meant to build. You realized the loudest thing you could ever do was say nothing. Because silence doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise. It means you've learned how to observe without reacting, to protect your peace without permission, to let people misunderstand you without feeling the need to correct them. And when you did that, when you chose silence over chaos, everything changed. You walked away without slamming doors. You stopped arguing with people, committed to missing your point. And suddenly, the world started to notice. Because silence, when it's born from power, shakes the ground. It's not absence, it's presence. It's not retreat, it's redefinition. That's when silence becomes loud. There is a kind of silence that doesn't mean defeat, it means dominion. The kind that doesn't shrink in the shadows, but rises in stillness. You used to over-explain yourself, didn't you? You used to spell out your heart in letters no one bothered to read. You used to pour from your soul just to be met with silence in return, until one day you stopped. Not because you had nothing to give, but because you realized they weren't ready to receive it. That's when silence found you. It whispered, let them talk. Let them assume. Let them go. And you listened. You stopped chasing clarity from those who thrive in confusion. You stopped waiting for closure from people who were never open to begin with. And instead of noise, you chose peace. You started to watch. Watch how they move. Watch what they value. Watch how your absence echoed louder than your presence ever did. And in that silence, your strength matured. Your discernment sharpened. You became dangerous, not because you fought back, but because you didn't have to. You had already risen, already evolved, already detached. And now they feel it. Your silence, it's louder than any speech you ever gave. You see, silence isn't just about not speaking. It's about what happens when the speaking stops. It's the moment you stop giving explanations to people who are already committed to misunderstanding you. It's the moment you realize that not every battle deserves your energy. Not every comment deserves a clapback. And not every room deserves your presence. Silence is your declaration that peace is more valuable than pride. That your healing matters more than being heard. That your energy is too expensive to waste on people who treat you like a bargain. And that's when your silence gets loud. That's when they notice you're not picking up the phone. That you stop showing up to conversations that only drain you. That you stop laughing at jokes that were always meant to mock. And it hits them, not because you shouted, but because you vanished. You became a mirror. You let your distance speak the truth. Their egos never wanted to face. That you were the one holding it all together. That your presence was the gift they never valued. And when you took it away, without a word, that silence thundered through their comfort. Because the quietest goodbye is the one that echoes forever. When you go silent, you don't just walk away, you elevate. And not everyone can handle your elevation. Because silence has a way of exposing what noise tries to hide. You're no longer reacting to jabs or shade or passive-aggressive comments. You've outgrown that. You've upgraded from emotional chaos to spiritual clarity. And when they can't get a rise out of you anymore, when your peace becomes unshakable, they panic. Not because you're loud, but because you're clear. You've made peace with your past. You've cut the strings to manipulation. You've healed the wounds that once made you stay in toxic cycles. And now you sit in rooms without needing to prove yourself. You let your growth speak. You let your silence do the talking. Because that kind of silence has power. It's the power of restraint, of wisdom, of discernment. You're no longer triggered. You're trained. And while others may mistake your silence for weakness, deep down they know it's strength. The kind of strength that doesn't entertain drama, doesn't beg for loyalty, doesn't settle for crumbs. You're not running. You're rising. And the higher you go, the quieter you become. Not because you're afraid, but because you finally understand what deserves your sound. There's a heaviness in silence, but not all weight is bad. Sometimes silence holds more healing than 1,000 words ever could. You've learned that sometimes the best response is no response. Because silence doesn't just protect you, It defines you. It tells people how to treat you. It teaches them that you won't be pulled into every fire they light. You won't dance in circles just to keep the peace. You are the peace. And when you stop explaining, when you stop defending, when you stop shrinking yourself to fit into boxes that were never built for you, that's when your silence becomes truth. Truth they don't want to hear. Truth they tried to deny. Truth they can now only feel by your absence. That silence isn't a pause. It's a sentence. And they read it loud and clear. Because you used to plead. You used to fight for your seat at the table. Not anymore. Now you build your own table, and if they want access, they come correct, because your silence made it known you are no longer for sale, no longer desperate, no longer wounded. You are whole. And whole people move different. Quietly, boldly, unapologetically. That's the power of silence born from healing. You didn't lose your voice. You reclaimed it. And in that reclamation, you discovered that silence doesn't mean you gave up. It means you've given it to God. That's what makes your silence so loud now. It's not empty, it's surrendered. It's full of intention, full of power, full of presence. You no longer waste words on people who never cared to hear your truth. You no longer argue with energy that's beneath your elevation. You've entered a season where peace is non-negotiable, where your spirit is too sacred to be constantly defending your decisions. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your heart, your time, or your thoughts. Silence drew the line they refused to respect. Silence became the boundary that no one could cross without consequence. And yes, it confused them. It rattled them. Because people expect chaos when they create it. But you gave them calm, you gave them stillness, you gave them the sound of your absence. And it screamed that you've healed, that you've evolved, that you don't owe anyone an explanation for becoming who you were always meant to be. That's the silence that shifts rooms, the kind that moves mountains without ever making a sound. They'll say you changed. They'll say you switched up, but they'll never admit they gave you every reason to. Your silence is the answer to the questions they don't want to ask themselves. It's the consequence of their carelessness, the result of the countless times they overlooked your heart while it bled for them. You gave your best to people who only took, and when you finally stopped giving, they felt it. Your silence became a mirror. It forced them to face what your presence had been shielding them from, the truth. And the truth is, you were always the blessing. You were the stability in their storm. You were the light they kept trying to dim. But now, your silence says, no more. No more self-betrayal. No more overextending. No more lowering your frequency to fit into spaces that can't hold your truth. Silence is the new standard. Because the healed version of you doesn't need to scream. Doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to convince. You just are. And that kind of being, that kind of wholeness carries a sound all its own, a frequency they feel in your absence, a weight they can't shake, a silence that speaks and echoes. You've learned now that silence isn't the absence of voice, it's the birth of value. It's the declaration that you've leveled up. That you've seen too much, endured too much, grown too much to keep explaining who you are to people committed to misunderstanding your soul. Your silence is strategic. It's intentional. It's layered with meaning they'll never fully grasp, because the old you needed validation. The new you moves in purpose. The old you feared being alone. The new you thrives in solitude. The old you tried to be everything to everyone. The new you became everything you needed. And finally stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. That's why your silence is so loud. There comes a turning point in every life when you stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, what do I think of myself? That's the moment you stop living in reaction to other people's treatment and start living in alignment with your own worth. You've bent too far for people who wouldn't budge an inch for you. You've made excuses for disrespect, tolerated inconsistency, and played small in rooms that didn't even deserve your presence. But no more. Because there's a difference between being kind and being used. There's a difference between being patient and being played. You were not born to adjust yourself endlessly to fit into someone else's broken definition of love, friendship, or loyalty. You were born to set the standard. And when you finally realize that, everything changes. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating value. You stop asking, is this good enough? And start declaring, this is the level I live on. The people who can't reach it will fall off, not because you push them, but because you stop lowering yourself. That's when the shift begins. Not loud, not flashy, but quiet, firm, and final. You stop settling and you start standing. You see, settling isn't about what's available, it's about what you accept. You don't settle because that's all life had to offer. You settle because at some point you forgot who you were. You forgot what you deserved. And somewhere in your heart, you believed the lie that maybe love should be lopsided. That maybe peace should be painful. That maybe your value is too high to be seen clearly. But now you remember. You remember that real love doesn't confuse you. That real friends don't compete with you. That people who truly care show up consistently, not just when it's convenient. And when that truth sinks deep into your bones, you start building a different kind of life. A life where loyalty isn't begged for, where time isn't wasted, where you don't fight for a seat at tables built on ego and manipulation. You build your own. And you set a standard not to scare people off, but to remind yourself that you are worthy of more than the bare minimum. You are not here to tolerate just anything. You are here to experience what's aligned, what's sacred, what's real. And to do that, you have to stop settling. There's nothing wrong with having standards. The world will tell you you're too picky, too harsh, too cold, but what they really mean is you're not easy to manipulate. You've grown past flattery. You've grown past promises with no action. You've grown past potential, and now you live by proof. You've been through too much to let someone smile in your face while wounding you in silence. So yes, you've raised the bar. And no, not everyone will clear it. But that's the point. You're no longer handing out VIP passes to people who haven't earned them. You've learned how to be alone without being lonely. You've learned that your peace is too valuable to trade for temporary attention. And when you carry yourself with that kind of strength, when you walk into a room already full, already whole, they'll either rise to meet your energy or remove themselves. And both outcomes are blessings, because your standards don't just protect you, they reveal who was never built to stay. You don't chase anymore. You don't beg anymore. You choose carefully, intentionally, powerfully. Because the one who sets the standard never has to plead for respect. They command it silently, boldly, completely. There's a sacred confidence that comes with refusing to settle. It's the look in your eyes that says, I've been broken before. I won't be broken again. It's the tone in your silence when someone tests your boundary and finds out it's no longer made of paper, it's made of steel. You didn't get here overnight. You got here through storms, through nights of doubt, through seasons where you accepted less just to feel something. But you learned. Oh, you learned. And now you know that anything that costs your self-worth is too expensive. That comfort built on disrespect is not worth keeping. That situationships, fake friendships, jobs that kill your soul, those are not signs of loyalty or survival. They're signs that you forgot your own value. But now you are wide awake. You walk with conviction. You no longer fear losing people because you understand the right ones can't be lost and the wrong ones were never yours to keep. You don't play small to keep others comfortable. You shine. You demand reciprocity. You speak your truth, and if it offends, so be it. Because your silence once tolerated too much. But now your strength sets the temperature of the room. You are the standard. It's easy to say you won't settle when life is smooth. But the real test comes in the moments of loneliness, the quiet nights, the hours when the phone doesn't ring and your heart aches for connection. That's when the temptation comes to answer texts from people you outgrew, to re-enter cycles you've already healed from, to say, maybe this is enough, when you know it's not. But those are the moments that define you, that shape the future you're walking into. Because every time you say no to what no longer serves you, you say yes to a life that does. You say yes to a love that will honor you. Yes to friendships that will uplift you. Yes to a purpose that will fulfill you. And yes It's lonely sometimes, but loneliness for a season is worth not living in misery for a lifetime. You've suffered too much for temporary peace. You've been silent too long to keep swallowing your truth. And now you wait, not passively, but with power. Because when you set the standard, you understand that anything sent by God will meet it. And anything that doesn't was never sent to stay. Let them watch. Let them wonder. You're not desperate. You're disciplined. It takes courage to walk away from something that once felt like home. But not everything that feels familiar is meant to be permanent. You stayed in some places too long because comfort wore the mask of love. You stayed loyal to people who were loyal only to their own needs. But now you walk different. You walk away when respect is missing. You walk away when effort is one-sided. You walk away when your value is questioned, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You've come to a place where your soul rejects what once seemed acceptable. And that's not ego, that's evolution. You're not bitter, you're better. And your standards reflect that growth. They say, I love myself enough to not settle for less. They say, I've earned my peace and I protect it. They say, I don't fear starting over. I fear staying stuck. That's why you no longer accept lukewarm connections. That's why you wait for depth over attention. That's why you don't respond to breadcrumbs anymore, because you feasted on the truth, and now crumbs won't do. The person who sets the standard doesn't fear being alone, because they know being alone while respected is far better than being together and tolerated. People will try to guilt you into shrinking. They'll call you too much when they can't match your energy. They'll say you've changed when really you just woke up. You woke up to the reality that your time is sacred, your heart is priceless, and your future is not something to gamble with. That's why you become selective. That's why you stopped explaining your boundaries, because you no longer need to justify your growth to those who chose not to evolve. You're not for everyone, and that's a blessing, not a burden. You've seen what happens when you settle. You've seen what it costs to dim your light, to silence your needs, to betray yourself just to be accepted. And you made a decision. Never again. Now your circle is smaller, your vision is clearer, and your energy is protected. You only invest in what grows you. You only entertain what feeds your spirit. And if someone wants access to you, they've got to come correct, because this version of you is too rooted to be shaken, too grounded to be swayed, too aware to be deceived. You don't settle anymore. You set the tone. You don't follow vibes. You are the vibration. One day they'll realize the version of you they mishandled was the blessing. The person they took for granted was the rare one. And by the time they try to come back, it won't be bitterness keeping you distant. It'll be standards. Because once you've healed, once you've rebuilt, once you've found joy in your own solitude, you no longer seek validation in places that broke you. You look forward. You look upward. You look within. And what you see now is strength. Not the loud kind, not the showy kind, but the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth. Someone who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't compromise on their peace. You're done performing for approval. You're done adjusting your crown to make others feel tall. You've reclaimed your dignity, and now you're dangerous, not because you fight, but because you refuse to fight for what should come with love. You don't ask, am I asking too much? You ask, are they giving enough? Because you set the standard. And when you live by that, your life changes. Your circle evolves. Your purpose ignites. You no longer settle for situations. You walk boldly into destiny. And that, right there, is power. There comes a point in your life when waiting on approval starts to feel like a slow death, when you realize you've spent too much time shrinking to fit in, too many days second-guessing your dreams, and too many nights silencing the fire in your soul just to avoid making others uncomfortable. But the truth is, purpose doesn't need permission, and your destiny doesn't require a vote. You've been waiting for the right moment, the right words, the right support. But what if I told you the moment has always been now, and the only validation you've ever needed is your own voice? You weren't made to play small. You weren't born to live rehearsed. You were created with intention, with fire, with vision. And that vision wasn't meant to be explained to everybody. It wasn't meant to be watered down or held back. It was meant to be walked in. You move with purpose. You speak with direction. You live like someone who knows exactly where they're going, even if no one else can see it yet. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Because when you stop waiting for green lights from people who don't even know how to drive, that's when you start living. You've been taught to ask for permission your whole life, permission to speak, permission to dream, permission to want more. And somewhere along the way, they convinced you that ambition was arrogance, that confidence was pride, and that moving without a crowd meant you were lost. But let me tell you something, they were wrong. You're not lost. You're not arrogant. You're called. You're chosen. And when God puts a fire in your chest, you don't wait for somebody else to hand you a lighter. You ignite it yourself. There's a reason you feel different. There's a reason you can't rest in the ordinary. That's purpose speaking. That's destiny pulling you. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, people will question you. But the ones who walk in purpose don't walk for applause. They walk for impact. You weren't meant to blend in. You weren't meant to wait around until it's convenient or comfortable. You were born to move even when it's misunderstood, because when your spirit knows the way, hesitation is just a distraction. Don't delay your calling trying to be liked. Don't slow down your journey trying to fit in. You weren't designed for comfort. You were built for calling. You don't need everyone to understand your past. Some people can't see your vision because it wasn't given to them. It was given to you. And you have to stop expecting people who live in fear to validate the steps of someone who walks in faith. You've tried to explain yourself to folks who couldn't even understand themselves. You've looked for confirmation from people who've never dared to leave the shallow end, but you're not meant to wade in still waters. You were born for deep seas. That's why your journey feels heavy. That's why you felt the resistance. Because purpose will always provoke pressure. It will always come with opposition, but don't you dare mistake pressure for punishment. It's a sign that something powerful is being shaped inside you. You're not moving recklessly. And every time you choose action over fear, every time you take a step without applause, every time you keep going without a cheerleader in sight, you're walking in something bigger than approval. That's purpose. That's mission. That's divine movement. So hold your head high and keep walking, even if it's with trembling hands and silent tears, because you're not waiting anymore. You're becoming. You've learned that waiting on permission is a trap, a prison dressed in politeness, a cage made of somedays and what ifs. But you've outgrown that now. You've seen what happens when you put your future in the hands of people who are still healing from their past. You've seen how dreams die in the corners of conversations that start with, "You sure you can do that?" And now you've decided you don't need a panel to approve your promise. You don't need a crowd to validate your crown. Your life is not up for debate. You're not an idea in progress. You're a force in motion. You've stopped asking, "Is it okay if I try?" and started declaring, "I will." And with that shift, everything around you begins to change. People who once ignored you now start paying attention. Environments that once drained you now feel too small to contain your power. That's because purpose expands you. It pushes you beyond boundaries, beyond expectations, beyond fear. And though it's not easy, it's worth every hard step. You don't follow trends, you follow truth. And that truth is loud in your spirit. You don't need to be accepted. You just need to be obedient to what's inside you. There's a freedom in no longer asking for permission to be who you already are. You stop waiting to feel ready. You stop waiting for the perfect time, the perfect opportunity, the perfect version of yourself, because you realize it's already in you. That dream you've been carrying, it's real. That vision that keeps waking you up at night, that's not a fantasy. That's direction. You don't need another sign. You don't need someone to co-sign it. Your life is the sign. Your hunger is the sign. The fact that you haven't given up is the sign. You've survived too much to keep standing still. You've been quiet long enough. And now you move. Not timidly, not halfway, but with every ounce of power you've got. People might not understand it. They might try to talk you down, but that's okay. Purpose doesn't always look pretty in the beginning. Sometimes it looks like lonely nights. Sometimes it feels like rejection, but keep moving, keep pressing, because you are not living to please people. You are living to fulfill a call. And when your feet move in obedience to that call, heaven makes room for your arrival. No more asking, no more waiting, just moving. You've got to stop playing small just to make people feel big. You've got to stop dimming your light so others can avoid facing their shadows. The truth is, your growth will make some people uncomfortable. Your confidence will stir their insecurity. But that's not your problem. You were not created to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You were created to break chains, to shatter ceilings, to rise, even when everything around you said, stay down. So when you walk, walk like you know who sent you. When you speak, speak like your words matter, because they do. You've wasted too much time pretending you were just figuring things out, when deep down, you knew exactly what you were called to do. You were just afraid. Afraid of what they'd say, afraid of standing out, afraid of failing publicly. But now you understand. Failure is not falling short. Failure is not moving at all. So take the step. Make the leap. Move even when it's messy. Trust even when it's unclear. Because when you stop asking for permission, you finally step into the fullness of who you are. And when that happens, there's no stopping you. You're not the same person you used to be. You don't need convincing anymore. You don't need hand-holding. You've walked through enough fire to know what you're made of. You've cried enough tears to know your own strength. You've spent enough years waiting, and now it's time to build, to move with force, to move with fire. Your purpose is not polite. It doesn't wait quietly in line. It doesn't ask, is now a good time? It says, we start now. You've been assigned to something higher than approval. You've been called to disrupt, to inspire, to lead. And you can't lead from the back row. You can't change the world whispering in rooms where you were meant to roar. So let them talk. Let them question. Let them doubt. You're not moving for them. You're moving for you. And the ones who are meant to go with you will catch up. But the movement starts now. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. You don't walk like you're unsure anymore. You walk like every step is divine, like every breath is on purpose, because it is. Your purpose doesn't knock. It kicks doors open. And when you show up like that, the world doesn't just notice, you change it. And if they ask who told you you could do that, you tell them, purpose did. If they ask who gave you the right, you say, my calling did. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your greatness. You don't need to soften your steps to make others feel comfortable. This is your season to rise, to move in silence when needed, and to roar when required, to stand firm in the face of doubt and say, I'm not here by accident. I'm here by assignment. There's something different about you now. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you enter a room, the way you no longer explain your every move. That's what purpose does. It grows you, it humbles you, it empowers you. It makes you unstoppable. So when you wake up tomorrow, don't wait for a signal. Don't look for a green light. Don't ask if it's okay. Just move. Move with fire. Move with certainty. Move with the conviction of someone who knows this life is not a rehearsal. It's your time. Right now. Not later, not someday. Now. You move with purpose. And when you do that, no one, not one soul can stop what's already been written. There comes a moment when you stop counting years and start counting meaning. When you finally see that time isn't something to burn, waste, or borrow. It's currency. And once it's gone for good. You begin to understand that every second is either invested or lost. And those who treat time like it's unlimited are the ones who never really live. You've reached a place where every minute matters, where you can no longer tolerate people who rob your peace, steal your focus, or distract you from your assignment, because you finally know you're not here forever. You're not promised tomorrow. You don't have the luxury of someday. And that truth, it wakes you up differently. It makes you walk with urgency. It makes you love with clarity. It makes you dream with intention. Time has taught you that comfort zones kill more dreams than failure ever could. That the cost of procrastination is far greater than the price of discipline. So now you move different. You think twice before giving your hours away to things that don't build you. You've stopped renting out your energy to temporary people because you finally understand your time is your wealth. When you were younger, time felt infinite. You gave it away like it would always come back. You said yes to things that didn't matter. You chased approval like it was a prize. You entertained noise just to feel included. But now you know better. You've learned that every hour you spend is a choice. That every conversation, every commitment, every delay is costing you something. Time is not just a clock. It's a trade. And when you waste it on things that don't feed your future, you go broke in ways the world can't see. You've started to treat your time the way the wise treat their money, with intention, with clarity, with boundaries. You no longer explain why you don't show up for drama, why you're not available for gossip, why you're not answering every call. Because you know what it costs. Peace is expensive, growth is expensive, and success, it demands a toll of time that you're no longer willing to spend recklessly. You don't hustle to impress anymore. You move to align. And that shift, that new respect for the clock, that sacred understanding of your hours, that's what separates those who live with fire from those who fade in silence. You used to think that being busy meant being productive, that having a full schedule meant you were making progress. But now you see it clearly. Activity is not the same as advancement. Busyness can be a mask for fear, a distraction from purpose. You've learned that not all movement is forward, and not every opportunity is worth the time it takes. Now, you're strategic. You don't just fill your days, you design them. You ask yourself, will this feed me? Will this grow me? Will this pull me closer to who I'm meant to be? And if the answer is no, you let it go. Because you understand that the wrong people, the wrong projects, the wrong paths can drain you of years. You've seen how fast a season can slip through your fingers when you are distracted, and you vowed not to let that happen again. You've learned to say no with grace, to walk away without guilt, to invest your hours like they matter because they do. You're not trying to impress the world anymore. You're trying to impact it. And you know that kind of power doesn't come from running in circles. It comes from moving with purpose, protecting your time like treasure. You've come to understand that your future is not just built by what you do, it's built by when you do it. Timing is everything. And if you wait too long to act, life has a way of moving on without you. You've seen dreams die, not because they were impossible, but because someone waited too long to believe in them. You've seen relationships slip because people took time for granted. And now you treat time like it's sacred, like every minute has a mission. You plan with urgency, not fear. You love with boldness, not delay. You pursue your calling without apology, because you know that time won't wait for you to feel ready. It won't pause while you decide if you're worthy. It keeps moving. And now you do too. You no longer stall your greatness waiting for the perfect moment. You create the moment. You seize the day before the day seizes you, because you've learned the hard way. Wasted time becomes regret. And regret is the most painful kind of poverty, but not anymore. Not in this chapter. Now you're wise. Now you're intentional. Now you live like every second counts, because it does. When people ask you why you've changed, why you don't entertain certain things anymore, why you're not as available as you used to be, you smile, because they don't realize the value of what you've come to understand. You're not distant, you're disciplined. You're not cold, you're focused. You know what your time is worth, and you won't spend it on anything that won't give you life in return. You've paid the price of burnout, of stretching yourself too thin, of saying yes to everything and everyone. And now you protect your peace like it's your paycheck. You schedule your energy like it's limited, because it is. You don't take random calls. You don't scroll aimlessly. You don't meet just to meet. You don't go where you're tolerated. You move where you're valued. Your time is the proof of what you prioritize. And you've stopped apologizing for protecting it, because the people who truly love you will never demand that you bankrupt your soul to prove your loyalty. They'll understand, they'll respect the grind, the vision, the journey. And if they don't, that's fine. Because you didn't come this far to trade your time for crumbs. You've learned what it's worth. You felt it, that gut punch of realizing how many years you gave away to the wrong things. You've had those moments where you whispered to yourself, I can't get that time back. And that pain, it changed you. It humbled you. It focused you. It made you realize that every wasted minute was a teacher, that every delayed decision, every misused season, every second spent chasing what didn't love you back, it wasn't the end. It was the awakening. And now, you don't just value time, you honor it. You wake up with purpose in your bones. You plan your days like they matter. You guard your calendar like it's a vault, not because you're obsessed with productivity, but because you're in love with your future. You know what it costs to drift. You know what it costs to settle. And you refuse to go back to the version of you that gave away hours just to feel busy. That version is gone. This version is sharp, focused, unwavering. You don't chase time anymore. You command it. And every day you're building a life you don't need to escape from, one choice, 1 hour, one investment at a time. You understand now that time is not emotional. It doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't wait for you to heal. It doesn't pause when life gets heavy. It keeps ticking. And you can either let it pass or you can let it build you. You've chosen the latter. You've chosen to rise early, to work smart, to rest intentionally, to surround yourself with people who don't waste time whining, but spend time winning. You've stopped begging people to value your time. They either match your urgency or they miss your presence. You no longer argue with distractions. You don't debate with delay. You don't reason with resistance. You move. Because you know time rewards action. It favors the doers. And you've become one of them, not just dreaming anymore, but doing. Not just hoping, but hustling. Your time is your testimony. And when you look back years from now, you won't see regret. You'll see evidence. Evidence that you knew what you were worth. That you treated your minutes like miracles. That you didn't spend your life waiting. You spent it living boldly, faithfully, powerful. And that's why when you walk into a room now, people feel something different. They don't just see a person, they feel presence. Because someone who understands the value of time carries themselves with gravity, with poise, with a kind of energy that says, I'm not here to waste a moment. You're no longer entertained by drama. You're no longer fueled by urgency. You're led by intention. Every word you speak, every place you go, every project you pursue, it's all by design. You've made peace with what you can't get back, and now you protect what you still have. And here's the truth. When you truly understand that time is currency, you stop spending it and start investing it. You spend more time with people who love you for who you are. You create more, rest better, and move slower in the things that matter. You've stopped being addicted to urgency and started falling in love with depth. That's the reward of wisdom. That's the fruit of someone who's awake. And now that you're awake, you'll never go back to sleepwalking through life again. You understand it now. Time is the most expensive thing you own. And you're spending it like a king. So here we are, standing at the threshold of a different kind of awakening. Not the kind that screams in your face, but the one that whispers deep in your soul, this is your time. Not borrowed time, not future time, not somebody else's timeline, yours. And when you reach that season where life no longer impresses you with noise, but with clarity, you understand something powerful. Real life doesn't begin with age. It begins with alignment. It begins when you stop waiting for validation and start walking in your truth. It begins when you stop asking for permission and start moving with purpose. You become dangerous the moment you realize who you are, what you're capable of, and how valuable your time really is. And at that point, life starts to feel less like survival and more like calling. That's the shift that changes everything. Every scar you carry, every tear you've wiped, every silent night you've spent wrestling with doubt, it was training, it was preparation. It was your pain molding you into a person the world couldn't break. That's why your silence has become loud now. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You've grown out of needing applause. You don't speak to be heard anymore. You speak to build. And when you're silent, it speaks for you. Philip says, I've mastered restraint. I've mastered discipline. I've mastered myself. You're no longer settling for situations that drain you. You've set standards and you live by them. You've realized that life doesn't hand you joy. You have to demand it with your choices, protect it with your boundaries, and grow it with your wisdom. You stop participating in things that left you empty, because now you know what full feels like. And with this understanding, you've stopped giving your energy away carelessly. You've stopped letting the wrong people waste your most sacred resource, your time. You no longer view time as hours on a clock. You see it for what it is, currency. And you spend it only on what builds you, heals you, and elevates your life. You've traded approval for alignment, distraction for discipline, comfort for growth. You don't chase anymore. You choose. You move with a focus that's sharp and quiet. You no longer let fear of being misunderstood keep you from evolving. And with every decision you make now, you send a message. You respect yourself too much to settle for anything less than purpose. That's power. That's real growth. That's what makes you dangerous. This is what it means to truly begin at 40. Not in years, but in awareness. You've seen enough to know what matters. You've lost enough to know what's priceless. And now you've gained something the younger version of you didn't even know to pray for. Clarity. And with that clarity, you build differently, you love differently, you live differently. You wake up not just to breathe, but to become. And every step you take is no longer about proving your worth, but about honoring it. Your life is not defined by what you didn't do in your past. It's defined by what you're willing to do now, fully awake, fully aware, and finally dangerous. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who live like their time matters. And now you are one of them. Thank you for listening, for showing up for your growth, for embracing the truth that this chapter of your life is not the end, it's the elevation. Keep walking with purpose, keep protecting your peace, and never forget that the greatest version of you is still becoming. God bless you, stay strong, and always move forward with your head high and your spirit unshaken.